Thank you, Schwartz. His name had to be Schwartz. If any of you have ever read any of my stuff, you know who Schwartz is. And that's a classical Schwartz. So this is Drew University. God, it looks seedy. I mean, from up here anyway. Because I went to a vast Midwestern university. In fact, you could put all of Drew in the broom closet of our of the student union at Indiana. And we used to hear rumors, you know. Like late Saturday night, you're listening to the football scores. They talk about Northwestern. I mean, real schools. And then the announcer would always say, and now other scores. And he'd very quickly give these little scores, places like Fairleigh Dickinson, Seton Hall, Japip, Drew. And, you know, we used to hear them just hanging at the bottom of the scores like fringe on the bottom of an elephant's howdah. I kind of like that image. And you know, being hello, test, hello. There's a guy with a, come on, you don't need it like that, for Christ's sake. There you go. Can all of you hear? It was a guy in the front row that turned it up, you notice. There's always one aggressive bastard. Well, oh yeah, they come right up on the stage and turn it on, you know. Oh yeah, he's prematurely short. However, seriously, when I heard about, you know, Drew, I'm not being funny. I was driving up here and I was thinking, Drew, you know, Drew. It's in Jersey. That says something about it right there. And I realized that Madison is a very elegant town. I mean, it's très elegant. I mean, the Nautilus Diner, and it's the only Gothic diner I've seen. It Gothic arches and all, you know. Pretentious diners. Of course, the diner is the Jersey art form, truly, and I'm driving down through it. I'm trying to think, Drew. What the hell do I know about Drew? Jeez, Drew. Then I remember, yeah, I heard of it. You know, it's funny. When you're a kid, when you're really, you know, a little kid, you hear about things, you don't really know what they're about, you know. You hear about places like Notre Dame. Now, you probably never quite have heard about that school yet. But where I come from, you know, there it is. It's looming on the horizon. Once in a while, late at night, you can hear linemen grazing in the dark out there. I mean, they don't have a university there. What they got, it's a farm team for the Chicago Bears, you know. And so and universities out there, of course, are really enormous. You couldn't conceive of how they are. And I went to Indiana, and Indiana is seriously so big that enrolling in Indiana is roughly like enrolling in the city of Trenton. I have 40,000 people. And our campus was truly immense. And because it covered a vast section of the countryside, and there were millions of people there, it actually had all the problems of any other urban community. For example, there was the slum section of the campus, the lower middle class section, the upper middle class, the wealthy. Once in a while, you'd see a Jaguar tooling off to the wealthy section of the campus. When you heard about riots out in the Midwestern universities, never really involved the university. It involved actually sections of the university. There were some sections you didn't go to. Other sections that you tried to make it to that place. And I got thinking, what do I know about Drew? What's its use? Why is it here? Many of you have probably asked that. Or why am I here? Which is more. But seriously, you know, it's a very elegant looking school. You got trees, birds, crabgrass. That's one of the big major problems here, I suppose, crabgrass, squirrels. and I've always envied, you know, people like you who really go to a really intimate school like this. Look at this. This is fantastic. This roughly was the number of kids that would show up after the average English class I would take for remedial reading. I mean, that wasn't a class. Those were the guys that weren't making it. They'd show up, this about this size here, representative. And I remember thinking about Drew when I was a kid. Drew, you know, you hear about schools like Seton Hall. You can't imagine anyone going there. It's just basketball team. Once a year you'd hear about them. But to actually go there. And I'm at Drew. It's really interesting. When I was a kid, I used to think that Drew was named after the guy that shot Lincoln. Well, 1866, it says on your thing out there. Historical character. You don't know. Probably in 100 years, there's probably a Lee Harvey Oswald University. Benedict Arnold High School. You never know. History does that to us. And here I'm sitting in the middle of Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. Route 24. Showbiz is strange. How I came to be here on Mother's Day. By the way, since it is Mother's Day, let's hear it from Mother. Let's hear it. Come on! There's one girl sitting there adamantly refuses to applaud. You ought to see her, old lady. My God. No, Mother's Day really is another name for Guilt Day. Guilt. All of you vaguely feel, oh, God, I wish I'd have done something, you know. What the hell? What can you say to your mother? I mean, for giving birth to you. I mean, what do you do, apologize to her? What? I mean, Mom, I'm sorry. I mean, you know, I called my mother. Everybody, probably in this room called their mother or did some damn fool thing, you know. I called my mother this afternoon. And she lives out there in what are you applauding, God? You don't know her. I mean, drunken old bum, she applauds. Well, I'll tell you, I called her up. Now, I'm very serious. I called her up and I said, Mom, how's it going? I just thought I'd call. Wish you a happy holiday, you know. She said, what holiday is it? I says, it's Mother's Day, Mom. Oh. They always make that little sound. Like somehow you ought to do something bigger than that. Like get reborn or something. I mean, to celebrate the day. And at that point, she says, wait a minute. She says, I have to hold the line a minute. She says, the sink is dripping. Christ, nothing changed. Every time I picture my mother in my mind, I see her hanging over the sink. How do you see your mother? Well, I see mine hanging over the sink. We had this sink. She's wearing this Chinese red rump-sprung chenille bathrobe. Little petrified egg on a lapel. She's got her hair up in these aluminum rheostats. Well, she always used to say, she says, you know, I want to be ready in case anything important happens. That's why she kept her hair up. Never took it down. Nothing ever happened. Year after year it would go by and she'd hang over the sink. My old man sitting here to my left in his underwear shirt, reading the sport page. Classical spring sport page in the Midwest. White Sox drop 8th in a row. Oh yeah, you don't know what it's like to live in the Midwest. You guys are all Easterners. And Easterners are winners. I mean, just by being here. I mean, you're in the East. People come to the East. They flee from the Midwest to come out here. God knows why. But they do. They come here. F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hemingway, Shepard. Now, most of them get through Jersey. Somehow I got hung up somewhere near Plainfield, you know. But Jersey, no, seriously, now out in the Midwest, Indiana is the state I come from. Now, do you know that Indiana, the Indiana Thruway, has no exits in Indiana? Serious, it just goes right over the goddamn state, just zap. We used to stand down on the ground. It was one of these raised up roads. We'd watch the cars go back and forth, read the license plates. Once in a while, we'd go all the way to Michigan City, where there was a small exit just over the border of Michigan. You could get on a turnpike. We'd drive along, and we'd see these cars going east and west, east and west. The old man sitting there in the front seat of the Oldsmobile. Say, look at that. California. You'd see this California car whistling along. California. They always had blue license plates with gold numbers. Indiana plates were kind of cardboard colored. And there's no state slogan on an Indiana state license plate. There's nothing to say about it. Here they've got the Garden State. Jesus, what guts. I mean, you guys here, you're really living in a garden. Can you imagine some poor bastard living in Secaucus? He's putting his Garden Plate State thing on the back, you know, Garden State. You could smell the pigs, the junkyards for miles around. But Indiana, no, it's a great, flat expanse of land. Our crop, our chief crop was high tension poles. You could stand there and just see miles of them taking power to the real states. I'm serious. You guys don't know anything about how it is to live out there. And why? You know, the other day I was interviewed by a magazine, and they were talking about humor. You know, they always do. They send the least humorous people to come and talk about humor all the time. You know? Oh, it's very serious. Can you tell us the derivation of your humor? How the hell do you answer that? They said, well, yes, fantastic talent to begin with. Insensate greed. All the other things that make a humorist what he is. But the most important thing that makes a humorist is a sense of looking on and never being part of. All humorists feel vaguely that they've never been invited to the party. And for that reason, they're always looking at the party. They can see it in its entirety. I mean, after all, the girl who is the prom queen can hardly write much about the prom. But some guy lurking out in the weeds who never, I mean, he never even got a bid. He never got an invitation to his own junior prom. That's where a humorist comes from. Now, there's two ways you can look at it then. You either become a humorist or a tragedian. Very closely related. Very closely. Now, I could have said, oh, my poor father, he lived, he grew, and he died, and never once did he see the White Sox rise above sixth place. Oh, God, oh, mores, oh, tempora. That's kind of nice, a little classical there. Then I would have been Arthur Miller, you see. But being from Indiana, you don't do it that way. I'd look over at the old man. He's sitting there with a can of Blatt's beer in his left hand. He's reading the headline, see? White Sox drop 8th in a row. And this is, by the way, by May, what is the date? May what? 8th? By May 8th, it was quite common for the White Sox to be 30 games out of first. Played 28 games at this point. And of course, this is the stuff of tragedy. Winners are never humorous or tragedians. I mean, what the hell would have ever happened to Arthur Miller had he actually made the sale? I mean, can't you just see the uncle saying to Hamlet, look, you're right. I shouldn't have messed around with her. Yeah, you're right. You should be king. Here, take this goddamn hat. Here. Forget Shakespeare. I mean, in other words, the fact that he didn't get it is what made it what it was. Now, this is the basis of all humor or tragedy. If, say, for example, Charlie Chaplin, in the first reel is a little bum coming in trying to get a job as a waiter in a restaurant, and in the second reel is the manager of the restaurant, and in the third reel owns a chain of restaurants. It's not funny. That's basically the story of McDonald's. Which can't be funny. I mean, I'm the only guy you probably know who has a Mayor McCheese glass. Very difficult to get the Mayor McCheese glass. The Ronald McDonald glass, nothing to it. What's the meaning of this? God damned if I know. Which also is where, where it's at. And so I can remember my mother, standing in front of the sink with the sink. Why did she stand in front of the sink? Well, every night the sink was where she was. The old man sitting there with his can of Blatt's. And a typical story about the Chicago White Sox would be Luke Appling, lines 3, tape measure fouls. Now, those of you who don't know anything about sports are sitting there. There she is. Don't know what the hell a tape measure foul is. Well, when you measure your victories by how far a foul ball goes, and that's why most humorists, incidentally, are largely not understood by many of the public because they have private references. A comic doesn't. And so if you swat a guy in the face with a pie, everybody knows what a pie is. They either laugh or they walk out. But they do not show confusion. And I have just told you about a tape measure foul. A few laughed. The others sat there the way they often sit in classes here at Drew, no matter what's talking. That look of aggressive non-comprehension. I mean, it's non-comprehension so deep that you begin to feel that since you do not comprehend it, it does not exist. Guts. I mean, parlay your ignorance into an actual asset. Take over the goddamn class, run it your own way. Ignorance 1 and 2. Clodishness 3 and 4. With lab on Saturday. It's okay. Doesn't matter. But as a kid, I looking back here, I says, Drew University. It's okay. You're going to spend your entire life now. You think, everybody knows about Drew. You feel great going here. But from the day you graduate, till your ultimate day, you will have to explain to people where Drew was. And why you went there. That's the hard one. They'll say, well, there's other real schools around here. Why'd you go there? It's, well, it's exclusive university. It's you're not fooling anybody. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. In fact, I like Drew. I mean, it's a great little club, and it I'm not putting it down. But I'll tell you this, one of the great things about going to a small school like this is that, you know, it's a personal thing, obviously. When a professor's standing up there, he actually sees you down there. And that makes him feel guilty. I mean, but I went to a school, believe it or not, where classes sometimes had 500 people in them. I mean, they had banked auditoriums for classes. And if you were lucky, you know, you could sit way up in a peanut gallery. You couldn't see the professor. Couldn't even hear him. You'd see a tiny blackboard. What the hell is this? Holy God. Is this a school flag? What? I don't know. First time I noticed it, St. Drew exorcises the devil. And it is from this fiery cauldron that Drew University sprang. Carry forth the torch of learning. Look at this guy here. He's very aggressive, but you notice he's standing behind somebody here. That's a terrible drawing, awful. I don't know what the meaning of this is, but it appears to be New Jersey feudal. Now that's what I mean about aggressive mediocrity. Now the fact this guy couldn't paint did not stop him. That's the worst looking snake. Look at that. Goddamn snake looks like Walter Cronkite. Huh? Barbara Walters are all there. Very allegorical. Well, geez, yeah. And so, nevertheless, you know, when you stop to think about, you know, what brought you here and where you're going. When I got out of Indiana, I figured everything is going to be paved. The world is going to go straight to a curious kind of Parnassus of forever and total ecstasy. It's one of the great American dreams, by the way, that one day you'll wake up in the morning and your life will actually begin. How many of you think up to this time you've just been screwing around? Light bulb will light, and happiness begins. Never starts. You ever take a real good look at your old man? Sitting there reading the paper. What does he think? What does he think when he looks at you? Does he ever, I'll tell you this, a little thought crosses his mind occasionally. Is this what it's all about? I gave birth to this toad? Here you are spending his dough with Drew. Sunday afternoon drinking Sanka. God. When we're 15 years old, we all believe the world is nothing but untouched, unchewed, untasted future ecstasy. When you grow up, you've heard that many times. What you're going to do, what you're going to be. My mother often asks me, even now, what are you going to do? I can't explain it to her. I gave up, Ma. I don't do anything. Sit around, make smart-ass remarks. Hanging to the edge of showbiz. fighting my way through the great, vast minnow net of time. That's pretty good. And now, tonight, here I am on a Mother's Day in May at Drew University, in the coffee shop. Is this a coffee shop? The hub. The pub. This is the pub. Very creative name. But Drew has never been known for creativity. It's been known for the solid worth of its citizens, squatting around in a pub on a Sunday afternoon thinking deep thoughts. Well, it's funny. Some kids go on to go to Princeton. Incidentally, I've always felt a little sorry for kids going to Rutgers. Because when you stand on your tippy toes at the campus, Rutgers, you can actually see the very tip of Princeton. So close, you can almost taste it. But so far, it's a vast gulf. And why does this happen? Well, there's a number of reasons. Some kids go on to believe that life is successful, happy. I mean, can you imagine Carter waking up in the morning? He really made it. Smiles, puts his socks on. And then there are the rest. Us, drinking out of forever paper cups, looking for the ultimate McDonald's, hoping to get there in time so that they haven't stopped serving Egg McMuffins. Has Nelson Rockefeller ever had an Egg McMuffin? Has he ever gone to the Burger King? Had it his way? But of course, we all live by these little slogans and these little mythological things that are in the commercials. And you all laugh because you recognize the Burger King and the mystique of McDonald's. Then there's a little minority group that goes to Geno's, the Pizza Hut, the commercial. It's like a friend of mine. Have you ever wondered why your life doesn't work the way it works in commercials? Those people live total ecstasy. A guy shaves his face, Farrah Fawcett Major squirts the Rapid Shave on him. He smiles. I think one of the greatest commercials going today, it's true surrealism, is the one where the guy puts the shaving cream, makes a line right down his face, shaves one side with one blade, one side with the other blade. Then the guy takes the credit card, goes, 100 years from now, they're going to look at that and wonder what in the hell we were talking about. But it seems to make sense to us now. Now, I've shaved practically every day of my life since I was about 15. Something women never do. That is, admit to it. Shaved every day. And I've never once had a moment of ecstasy. You know, when you shave and you grin and you put the aqua velva on. I needed that, oh Jesus. No, every time you shave in the morning, there's always that thing, that little gnawing voice that says it never goes away. 105, you'll still be shaving. There's a little spray of blood occasionally. They never show people using John paper either, you know. On the there is no feeling like getting up at 5:15 in the morning when you've got 3.5 minutes to shave and get somewhere. There's no hot water. You're half asleep. One morning, I, honest to God, shaved with deodorant. Serious, you know that kind of deodorant, that stuff that came in a little white flat thing? Took it out, just put it on. Shave, Jesus Christ. For 3 days my face was going on. But it didn't smell, I'll tell you. But now these are the things that are never mentioned in commercials, and we all live it. Like a friend of mine bought a Ford Galaxy. No, he bought the Ford Granada. You know, the one that looks almost like a Mercedes, but not quite. I mean, with that cardboard hood, I mean, you know. Yeah, have you ever felt a little sorry for America now? All the commercials are based on, we almost are as good as something they make somewhere else. In fact, they even had a commercial a couple of years ago where the guy came out with his Ford. Do you remember that when he came out? And he glued little Mercedes 190D signs on the back, little Mercedes thing. And he's driving a Ford. Classical American concept. Look like something. You don't have to be it. A fraud. And on the bottom of the commercials for the Ford Granada, it always says, watch for it when you see it, EPA tested. 29 miles to the gallon in the city, 38 miles on the highway. And my friend gets 6.5. And he thinks, well, it's because I am unworthy. Other people get the real Ford Granadas. It is true that I got one for some damn reason that has a silly putty transmission. Has a balsa wood frame. Reynolds wrap hood. That's because I am unworthy. Now you always have a feeling that Ricardo Montalban has the real Chrysler. Not the ones you see parked back at the A&P, where the Airedale has used the left rear tire. Somebody's written "screw you" on his side. But that's what the commercials do to you, you see. They really give you a feeling of hope, and at the same time a vague feeling of despair. All of showbiz does that. Every night you watch Johnny Carson. Look at the friends he has. And they've all made a record, or been in a movie, or about to open in a play. And every time they say something funny, he says something even funnier. And you're sitting out there. You look at your friends, short, fat Aki. You're going out with a girl named Jeanette. Walks sideways. Nobody's ever made a record, and you're friends. Well, I've been on the Carson show many times. And when you sit next to Johnny, it's a totally different thing than when you're watching it. You're actually sitting there, and here's Johnny Carson's desk. He has special lights that light him specially, not the others. No, seriously. He is lit very specially. And he's always a little higher than all the rest, so that everybody's looking up. It's important. And on his desk, he's written things. He sits there while he's talking. He's written all kinds of fantastic, obscene doodles. And he has a little bunch of cards in front of him, which you do not see. And each card is his next ad lib. That's right. It's engineered. Why not? It's a show. He never pretends that he's saying these things. He flips them over. Says something, pulls his ear, flips them over. And you sit next to him and you watch it all going on. You see the audience out there. And you wonder what the nature of media is. What has it done to us? I bet most of you in this crowd really believe that Robert Redford knows more about love and life and sex than you'll ever know. Why? Because he's on that big screen. His nose never sweats like yours. And so it drives people constantly to search the ultimate movie. And most people believe that if they got into the movies, that would be true life. That it'd all come together in the second reel. You'd be taller than life. In fact, as you drive around out in Jersey, you drive along, one of my favorite roads is to go when you come right out of the Lincoln Tunnel. You know, you just whip out of the Lincoln Tunnel, and there's all those roads going off, Route 3, Route 46, Route 22. Some night, 4 in the morning, I want to sneak out and change all those signs. I can see 12 million guys hurrying to Plainfield, you know. And they're trying to get to Trenton. What the hell, you know? Now, most people never have urges like that. For God's sakes, don't. Now, if you don't have urges like that, you will grow up and be a nice member of the Kiwanis Club. You'll be okay. I'll bet there are guys in this room that were born reading the Reader's Digest. And quote it, you know. Scares the hell out of me. But as I keep coming back and forth between New York and Jersey, I live in the Village on 10th Street. That's the Village. Manhattan. And every couple of days, I drive down 7th Avenue and I duck into the Holland Tunnel. Usually it's 3 in the morning. Get into the tunnel. If you notice the tunnel, by the way, very symbolic piece of business in our time. Oh yes, in the tunnel there is no winter, no summer, no night, no day. Yellow light bulbs hang forever. There's no state, nothing. It's just a long... There are times when I drive through it, when I'm the only car in there. Get the sense that I'm in an endless John. It's got tile walls. It's purgatory. You're suspended between heaven and hell, between New Jersey and New York. You can't tell which is heaven, which is hell. You drive and go around those turns all by yourself. I have actually had the urge to jump out of my car and just paint a big crack on the side. Drive off like hell, you know, and I can see the next guy, oh my God, help! All of Manhattan flees to Connecticut. The river has sprung a leak. You don't think those things. You're a very straight person. But they constantly bedevil me. Driving through. Then I get back. I leave Jersey. I'm playing places like Drew. They have trees and leaves on the trees. And they're actual trees. Down on 10th Street, they got a few plastic little things there. It's nothing is sadder than to see a docksman trying to use a plastic tree. That's the Village, you know, he comes along, poor little bastard, you know, and you can see, you know, he puts his leg up. And of course, because it is plastic, he gets a chemical reaction. You hear sizzling and bubbling. What's he talking about, Marge? And so that's, you know, when you live in New York and you look out at Jersey, you look at it, you know, you just marvel at it. To me, the most American of states is Jersey. Absolutely. Sometimes I drive just to go out and get on Route 22. Now, I think Route 22 is the biggest pop art creation in the world. The whole route. Come roaring out of the tunnel, and there's a big sign that says, "Welcome to beautiful Union City." God, what guts, you know, and it's... You'd say to yourself, Jersey, walking to beautiful Union City, and you can see the mafia guys, junkyards, gas stations. Doesn't matter. You climb that hill. You make the big turn there, Newark Airport. As they say in Jersey, Newark Airport. I have known, boy, do they, that's one of the most cleverest, truly designed examples of what we call the creative maze. Oh, yes, I've known people that have driven around Newark Airport 3-4 weeks. They only get off eventually because of centrifugal force. It spins them right. They go sailing off. I mean, seriously, you go out, all these routes, you go in and out and back and forth, and finally you find yourself either on Route 22 or the Jersey Turnpike. Doesn't matter what you take. You won't get there for hours anyway. Get out on the Turnpike. And the first time I came from the Midwest, east, I could not believe it. You guys are so used to it, you don't see it. You don't realize what it is. And when you come up over that great big bridge, that big like a skyline bridge, the thing that down by exit 12 and 13 and 14, you're high up and you look down and you see Newark Airport spread out down there. And you see a jet coming in out of the fog. Whistles over the road 8-10 feet above the... I mean, it's fantastic. Ooh, and your car rocks. Another one goes the other way. Ooh. And the smell. I mean, I never smelled anything like Jersey in full heat. It's like the whole state is trying to mate with Pennsylvania. I mean, down around exit 12, it's gamey and rich. I mean, it's an aphrodisiac. It's no wonder this is the most populous state in the Union. You drive through that stuff for an hour and a half, good God, you're going to grab anything that moves. That's why the Jersey natives are so fecund, short and fat and squat and beer drinking. That's the Jersey native. The great names of the towns. Out in the Midwest, they have simple names like Millerville, Daleville. These are actual towns that were around where I lived. Places like Griffith. You've got great names like Hackensack. There's a guttural quality in it. Sounds like somebody's dragging up an oyster. Hackensack. Brack. Hackensack. It's an old Indian name which really means that. It's a place where a chief drug up oyster. Hackensack. Brack. And I looked around the first time I said, Jesus, the names. This is the fabled East. And they have drive-in theaters, Route 3. Yeah, they got a big sign that says "Get More." Every night you can see it when you come out of the tunnel and you go whipping off towards 46 or Route 3 or 22 when they all spread out and hurl out into the darkness. There's one big sign that says "Get more out of life. Go to the Route 3 diner." You been to the Route 3 diner? That's a diner. All these Jersey guys squatting there. 3 in the morning when you walk into the Route 3 diner, you just get this feeling, just a wave of Jersey aggressiveness. You walk in, you've got this girl with you, you just see all those heads turning, all these guys with the leather jackets. You know that you've come. Eventually you knew what had to happen. Every male in this room eventually feels that one big guy is going to get him. But the women don't understand this. Every man knows it. The sense that one day a guy in the line ahead of you is going to turn around and say, "What did you say, you son of a bitch?" And he's just going to go, "Pow! Ass over tea kettle, you'll fly." This is part of being a man. This is the male mystique. Always in the darkness, in the bushes of life, there is slithering and groping confrontation. And then you drive a little further past the diner, and there's another big sign. It says, "Get more out of life. Go to the Route 3 Drive-In." Have you ever seen the Route 3 Drive-In? 4,000 acres of erotica. The first time I saw, I must say, in the Midwest, they don't take show business seriously as you do here. Oh, here they believe in it. This is the East. They believe. He tells you how to procreate. It's a fascinating concept. If you didn't get the book, your whole life, you would wonder, how come there's so many people? You keep looking for storks. No, it's true. The East really believes that it can improve its life through various secondhand vicarious media, a play. Now, I remember reading a review. I was in town maybe a week. You don't go to Broadway plays when you're living in places like Hammond, Indiana. And Brooks Atkinson was the reviewer then. He opened up the review of this play. It says, "Last night, this theater goer experienced an exquisite evening in the theater, deeply moved by the second act." I went down there, and there was a lot of people up on the stage there yelling at each other. My ass was asleep 5 minutes into it. Now, did I at that point, no, did I at that point believe that he was wrong? No, I was unworthy of the play. How many times have you gone to something and have been bored out of your skull? And you know it's great. And you come out, you say, "That was very moving." Deeply touching. Rich in insight. Right, Fred? So let's go to McDonald's. I want to think about that. No, it's showbiz that affects the East. And so that's why everybody wants to come east to be in it. And even within the first week after I got out here, I went to the Route 3 Drive-In to get more out of life. And they have this vast screen. Have any of you ever been to the Route 3 Drive-In? It's a fantastic experience, right? I mean, it's amazing. It's right in the flight path of of the number 4 runway of Newark. And so you see coming through as that beam of light goes up to that vast beaded screen. And you could see dust and the effluvia of all the junkyards for miles away drifting through it. Once in a while, a 737 goes right in front of the screen. The ground shudders beneath you. And you see all these dark cars, all these Mustangs. And I studied the Route 3 Drive-In carefully. And I began to see that a Jerseyite is like everybody else. See, it's women that go to the movies. Men are taken. I'm sitting in the car and I could see next door to me this 1967 Mustang. Obviously the pride, the absolute center of the life of the guy that was driving it. Charlie, sitting there, looking up at the screen. And it was Charlton Heston that night. A biblical epic. By the way, you get a fantastic concept, theological insight on the Bible, watching it at the Route 3 Drive-In. I mean, there he is. You see this plastic mountain, because first of all, the screen is so huge that you can see stuff you shouldn't see. They blow it up. You can see little things on the bottom of the mountain, like DuPont, it says, you know. The plastic mountain standing on the top of his Charlton Heston. He's wearing a bearskin rug. His skin is this non-denominational orange, you know. You know, it's a biblical picture anytime everybody's orange in it, see. And he's holding these giant tablets. These lightning bolts are hit the... Thou shalt not kill. Everybody's watching, squatting down there, and the planes are going... Thou shalt not commit adultery. You see cars starting to go. You know, I mean, that really can kill a lot of action. All of a sudden, up comes a tablet with a lightning bolt. Never thought of the commandments talking right to you, you know. Lay off it, buddy, for Christ's sake. Well, I thought to myself, you know, over the time that I was spending there in the drive-in and driving around down to the Tick-Tock Diner, West's Historic Diner. Oh, I know these places, I'll tell you. I have watched the Slavs downing awful awfuls at Bonds. This is where I do all my field work. You see the Slav in his native habitat in Jersey, and I mean, it's the only place I ever saw where they serve a sundae in a pig trough. And have you seen them there? They call it the pig's dinner, you know. And you see it, they actually are, you know, they're... I says, God, I'm in Jersey, you know. And the Hall of Fame, you ever gone to Bonds and Clifton? It's great, you know. They got a Hall of Fame. And if you drink more than 3 awful awfuls in absolute rotation, without stopping, your name goes on the all-time list. You get your 4th one then free. Well, is that for a hypothetical gift? You know, you drink 3 awful awfuls and they give you another one, see? And if you can keep that one down, without all of a sudden, all over the crowd, you get a gold star next to your name. The 5th awful awful, and you get your varsity letter. It's a giant pig. It's sitting... I said, God, they really let it hang out in Jersey, you know? Midwest has these elegant sundaes and they have little glasses and little cherries on top. No, not Jersey. So I studied Jersey. I began to realize this is a field for sociological study. And I began to go on Saturday nights to the Great Eastern. How many of you missed the Great Eastern? I mean, when the Great Eastern went out of business at Route 22, something died in Jersey. Oh, the Great Eastern was on a Saturday night. It was a fantastic experience. First of all, the day they built the Great Eastern, I saw it go up. It looked 10 years old already. I've never seen a new building actually being assembled with graffiti written on it already. I'm serious. That place looked old the minute they put it up, you know, and everybody looked mad. The windows were cracked. The parking lot had potholes in it. And they were always having a continual going out of business sale. You know? 5 minutes after they opened, going out of business, come on. Thousands of Jerseyites would go down in there on a Saturday night. You walk into the Great Eastern, you could just smell the excitement. It was just a dynamic. It was almost like a human compost heap. Jersey, God, it's a gutty state. And you'd see them walking around, pushing their carts. Typical Jerseyites. Walking around. Behind them would be this lady. She's got her hair up in these pink curlers. By the way, the pink curler is a Jersey thing. Big pink, you know, those plastic barrels. 18 kids all spread out around them. And they're walking around buying stuff, buying anything there. Big piles of stuff, all kinds of little things with knobs, plastic. Reduced, 69 cents. People would put them in the carts and leave. They didn't know what they were buying. It was buying, being there. It was a sexual act. Every once in a while you'd hear that PA. I missed the sound of that PA. About every 15, 20 minutes the voice would, attention please, sharpies. There is a sale of donuts now going on in the bakery department, 49 cents. 49 cents a dozen, both powdered and plain. In the next 15 minutes, and you'd see them go, wow. Great wave of humanity buying last week's donuts. Jersey. Rich. It was in the Great Eastern on Route 22. I saw something I'll never forget. At this time of the year in May, even in Jersey, hope springs eternal in the spring. In spite of all evidence to the contrary, that there is anything to have hope about. It nevertheless does. And they had, every year in May, they would have a sale of lawn furniture. And you'd see these people from Hackensack looking at the lawn furniture. Hackensack, they had little tiny lawns. There'd be a little plot of weeds out in the back next to the garage. I kept seeing it in my mind. Two typical Jerseyites looking at the lawn furniture. And one year they had this big clearance sale. Beautiful things. It was there that I saw my first concrete Mexican. They don't have those in the Midwest. It's only in Jersey, concrete Mexicans. Little concrete Mexicans, got a little concrete sombrero standing there. He's got a concrete serape, little concrete burro. I said, Jesus, Jersey. First time I saw one of those, I immediately saw in my mind's eye a little adobe hut outside of Mexico City. And there in the yard is a little concrete New Jerseyite. He's standing there, you know. He's got his WMCA good guy sweatshirt on. Standing next to the Native Transportation, a 1958 Thunderbird, you know. He's only in Jersey, you know. By the way, that's also a uniquely American thing. I just can't imagine a Frenchman having a concrete Englishman in his yard. I never known anybody that has a concrete Canadian standing there with a martini. You know. Underneath it says Ottawa. But it was at the Great Eastern that you saw this so clearly. The Great Eastern, they also had, I thought, one of the most symbolic things of our time. It says, guaranteed lifetime, guaranteed satisfaction, guaranteed 3/4 life-size 7 dwarfs. I don't know how many of you are philosophy majors, but the idea of a guaranteed 3/4 life-size mythical dwarf boggles the mind. What is a life-size mythical dwarf? Dwarf! There they're standing. All made of lifetime polyethylene. Dopey, grumpy, smiley, Doc. All of them there. By the way, Grumpy squirts fertilizer out of the ears. It's a functional life-size dwarf. And Doc has a little timer. When you go on your vacation, you set it, and he rotates, and he sprinkles the lawn. It's a little obscene, but it's kind of cute. So I thought, I said, Jersey, you got to study this state. I try to explain it back home. And seriously, you know, I have played places like the University of Colorado at Boulder. They couldn't comprehend Route 22. And once in a while when I play a school like that, I will just, you know, walk on the stage. I'll say, is there anybody here from Jersey? 3 tentative hands go up. These bastards have been passing for something they weren't. But now it's come out, they're from Jersey. I tell them about Hackensack. And then I have to admit that I come from the Midwestern equivalent of New Jersey. Indiana makes New Jersey look like Palm Beach. And I can tell you, when I went to the Warren G. Harding School, by the way, can you imagine at the age of 8, often, you don't know when you're cursed, when your life is damned, before you even know of such a thing as being cursed nor damned. In short, does your father deepen his soul as he looks around in the morning, 8 o'clock? Does he ever think, what the hell is it all about? How did all this happen? Does your mother ever do that? Yes. Do you? Mostly not. Because you think it's about you. That's why they're here. Because of magnificent you. Well, 10 years from now, all of a sudden, you're going to look around. So what the hell happened to it? I remember back in those days it drew. By then, you will have pretended that you liked it. Seriously. People invent a past that was mythical and great, tremendous. Or they invent an evil past, whichever is the most dramatic. But the reality they never talk about. They had no past. They just sort of screwed around. Nothing happened. And there I was, sitting in 2nd grade, the Warren G. Harding School, totally unaware that I was going to a school named after the worst president in history. Till now, of course. There's been several since that time. Oh, I'll bet right now there's some poor little kid someplace going to the Richard Milhouse Nixon School. He didn't know who the hell Nixon is. He's 8, you know, you're walking around. It's only later that he will realize. There I was in 2nd grade. I do remember we had a, just like this. Now, I imagine none of you really seriously ever really looked at this thing. What is this mythical, symbolic painting here that somehow captures the whole spirit of Druism? Is this an allegory on an English class? Is this a professor? Is this the scalding hellfires of ignorance? I don't know. I do know that in our school, the Warren G. Harding School, we had an auditorium. Had a curtain, sort of a tattletale gray curtain. That was the school color. Well, after all, it was a steel mill place. You don't have, color that gets dirty, you know. You could see all around on the horizon thousands of steel mills belching smoke into the air. If you think the Indiana I came from was the Norman Rockwell Indiana, I can only tell you Hammond, Indiana makes Newark look a little like the French Riviera. Was never any day, never any night, because the steel mills ran all the time, and you'd see these flickering red and yellow lights on the horizon. The blast furnace would be constant, and you'd see a great glow in the sky. Then there would be occasionally a distant explosion over at the Standard Oil plant. Yeah, you just hear boom, boom. You'd see this big mushroom cloud. I'm not kidding. It's actually true. And this is the way it is out there today. It's a big industrial area. And you'd hear this explosion. Then you'd hear sirens. Nobody paid any attention. It's like hearing the crickets here. It's life. I remember one time, seriously, the Calumet River, when I was 10, caught fire. It burned from horizon to horizon. Thousands of people went down there and watched it. The river was on fire. The fire trucks came and squirted water in the river. Seriously. You don't know what pollution is, buddy. You could go out right out in your yard and cut a chunk out of the air, you know. Just grab it and pull it in. People used it for fertilizer. They'd bury it. So I was going to the Warren G. Harding School. Now, not realizing at that point that already my life was separating into those two great avenues. Have you ever wondered how one group of people, we all start the same, you know. Mewling, puking babes. That's Shakespeare. Makes it official. If I said it, what a rotten thing to say. No, we all start out mewling, puking babes. A little damper on the bottom. Hanging around back of the garage. A little squirt like that. But then as time goes on, we gradually, as we march forward in time, this great procession of people begins to slowly separate into paths. One group goes on to become official. Walter Cronkite, Jimmy Carter, Mondale. I have a feeling Mondale sleeps in his suit. He is the squarest looking guy I ever saw. Looks like his hair is painted on. He has Oxford gray jockey shorts. He's a very serious man when they march on this way. And the other group slowly sidles off to the other way. And you don't know where it happened. How come Walter Cronkite went on? Walter Cronkite, can you imagine the power? What a fantastic feeling it must be to be Cronkite. Every night, 7 o'clock, the entire nation sits, watches. He has a big globe that comes out. You see these people in the back on. Have you ever noticed the guys behind Cronkite? All sitting there at their desks. They never look up. Cronkite looks out at the world. It's like the crowd in the back of the scene in the Mary Tyler Moore show. The ones that Murray never talks to. They just sit there at their desk all the time. They're never invited to the Mary Tyler Moore parties. They're just there. How did they get there? I always relate to those people. There's a short, sort of a fat guy that sits directly behind Mary Tyler Moore's desk. If you look directly over her shoulder, he's been sitting there 8 years. Never said a word. Nobody takes a paper from him, but he works. He must have gone to his equivalent of the Warren G. Harding School. There I am in 2nd grade. Not knowing at the time that not only was I in a school that no one ever heard of, just like you, but more than that, I was in a very subtle outgroup, damned by birth, a true minority, a damned, cursed minority. I was in the last 1/3 of the alphabet. Now, wait a minute. Do you know that actuarial studies have been made? Last 5 years, they've released a lot of studies on this, that the people in the last third of the alphabet live on an average 12 years shorter lives than the others. Listen to all the people named Abel Baker, Charlie, they're all laughing. You don't hear Wupperman laughing back there. No, I'm very serious. I'm not making this up. It's actually true. And why? Because you're constantly aware of the fact that you're at the end of the line. And whatever it is they're lining up for, they will run out of by the time you get there. That gnawing sense of imminent disaster. The guy at the front of the line believes the front of the line is where he belongs. In fact, if you notice television shows, top TV performers, a very interesting study being done on this. And it's being done, by the way, at Harvard on what the effect the alphabet plays on you. All the top television shows. Johnny Carson, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Chancellor, all up there at the top. There is no Chester Wisniewski show. Why? Well, because from the time you're a kid, if your name is in the last of the alphabet, you always think of the rest of the group out as in front. You're in the audience. They're up there. And so there I am, sitting in the back there. They seated us alphabetically. I'm back in the last row. I remember that second grade classroom. It was a long, narrow classroom. Venetian blinds along the left. Way up in the front, blackboards. The sun would come slanting in. It was kind of hazy. Over here is Schwartz. There was only one girl in our alphabetical ghetto. Helen Weathers. 4'9", 208. Wore her hair like a football helmet. She's squatting, sitting there. Chester Wisniewski. And behind all of us, Zinsmeister. Z-Y, by the way. Z-Y-N, Zinsmeister. You imagine how he sees mankind? Long line of people stretching to the horizon. He's screwing around in the back. He's always on the last page of every phone book. The page that gets torn out, lost. Zinsmeister. And up in the front of the class is Miss Shields. Now, we're so far back, I can't see her. I can't really see the front of the room. I can't, hazy. I could see that shifting figure moving back and forth. She looked like she was wearing some kind of a blue Brillo pad on her head. This blue, funny hair, you know. She was always wearing a purple dress. You could see these glasses shining. And we couldn't hear her in the back. In fact, every time I walk into a school, I get that subtle sense of impending disaster, defeat. I can smell education right here in this room. Ancient, musty ideas floating up in the ceiling there. Fear, failure. Some of you are on the edge. Do you agree? Don't tell me you're not. Well, as a kid, I remember sitting back there and I heard that voice, Miss Shields, talking. The way the educational voice sounds to me always is just kind of a then you'd hear and then the hands would go up in the front. What the hell are they raising their hands for? We never could hear why are they putting their hands up? And Schwartz is leaning forward trying to see. Helen Weathers is leaning forward trying to see. Zinsmeister is all the way in the back where they put the lunches in the cabinets. His entire education was spent smelling fermenting Twinkies and meatloaf sandwiches. And you know, we never knew the difference. That's the thing about a kid. You know, you don't know when you're getting really defeated, because you think it's that way with everybody. You don't question. We're sitting in the back. See the hands go up and the hands go down. Way up in the front, the hands go up and the hands go down. Always up in the front, there's about 3 rows of smart asses. You've got them in your class. Every class you go to, there's a bunch of kids that look like they were born with their hands up. They got their hands up waiting to answer questions that ain't been asked. You're sitting there, what the hell's going on? Listen, I took chemistry at Indiana, and I was really frightened. Organic chemistry, I discovered there were people who liked it. And believed in it. Not only that, could do it. It made no sense to me. They were talking about halogens. They had brackets and stuff all the time. And the professor was always saying, of course, this is an exception. I mean, chemistry is not a science. It's a bunch of goddamn recipes, you know? Try a little pinch of nitrate, and then... But there are others, they really... You could see it. Their minds are clicking like steel traps, and they're writing stuff down. And there I am, sitting back in the last rows of the Warren G. Harding School, not realizing at this point already my mind is being set into that pattern of being in the last row. Now, maybe it was good for me. It probably made me a humorist. I don't know. You were either a humorist or you became Zinsmeister. Damned forever. And we became very adept, by the way. The greatest fear of any kid in the back of the row was the fear of getting called on. We couldn't hear, we couldn't see. And I began to think that education was not getting called on. Avoiding the trap. And so we got very, very, very good at reading Miss Shields' voice. We couldn't hear her, but we could read the inflections. So when Miss Shields was going, you're safe. Information is being given to the class, which meant, of course, nothing to us in the back. We were okay. So you could relax. Then occasionally you'd hear that meant look out. Here comes a question. Look out. The hands would go up. And so each one of us devised his own protective coloration, just the way all of you will in your own life. Some of you will forever wear gray suits. Others will wear sunglasses. Others will wear long hair. Other guys will get rock records, and they'll play them at full blast to prevent people from realizing how shallow he is. Each guy has his own little protective coloration. His own broken field running to prevent being discovered. Every last one of us is afraid of discovery. I've always felt that if walking along Fifth Avenue in New York, any one of you, on a bright sunlit day, you're walking along, if I came up behind you and put my hand right on your shoulder and said very quickly, okay, buddy, let's go, it's all over. You'd turn and say, okay, all right. All right, goddamn it, I know it. You would walk 5 blocks before you started to build your defenses again. I didn't do it. What the hell are you talking about? You all secretly know you did do it. And if you didn't do it, you should have done it. And that in itself is a sin. Sin is everywhere. So each one of us devised his own technique of how to avoid getting called on. Now my technique, I used to move all the time. I'd keep a line of kids between me and Miss Shields. She never could see me. I moved back. It's fantastic. It works. Now Schwartz's technique, the minute the class started, he'd slowly start to sink down in his seat. So you see this little furry crew haircut above the top. Helen Weathers, fantastic. Pure Zen. She was ahead of her time. She's the only person I ever knew who could sweat at will. She sends up this fine yellowish spray around her. Miss Shields couldn't focus on her. You just see this haze back there. It's Helen, you know. Zinsmeister was Catholic. You could hear those beads going. You can just hear the steady tick 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 tick. Zinsmeister asking for divine guidance. Well, all right. You know, the funny thing about education, it's a very funny thing about education. If you've ever looked back on your grade school and your high school, you can't really remember anything you really learned. It's just sort of an accumulation of junk in your head, you know? Well, there we were, squatting back the last 3 rows at the Warren G. Harding's. We were learning nothing. We were like the driven snow. We were intellectual and learning virgins. Didn't worry about that. It was to avoid capture that we worried. And once in a while, something would come floating back. You know, acoustics is a strange science. It really is. It can't be predicted. Something would just come out of the darkness, and we'd hear it. A phrase. Like one day I heard Miss Shields. She was going, and I'm moving. You could see Schwartz sinking down. You could see the little faint cloud around Helen. The beads were ticking away. All of a sudden I hear, Peru. Schwartz and I argued for 8 weeks as to what a Peru was. He said it laid eggs. Had a bill like a duck. I said, come on. It's a fruit. Tropical fruit. I was well into my 18th year before I discovered what Peru actually is. It's a game. You play it with cards. And so, one day, so help me God, I'll tell you this is what happened, and something like this will happen to you in your education. One day, out of absolutely nowhere, a fact came back to us. Clean, irrevocable. Miss Shields said, and I quote, Bolivia exports tin. Quack, 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 quack. Suddenly I had this idea in my head of this country with all these tin cans, you know, and Bolivia exports tin, see? Well, at that point, Schwartz and I and Zinsmeister were walking along down the alley, see, and we suddenly realized that all these kids up in the front are getting all this stuff. And me and Schwartz got Bolivia in a tin. Walking down the alley. By the way, I spent a great deal of my time when I was a male. Now, this is a male thing. Not many girls walk down alleys. Males spend a lot of time walking up and down alleys. Now, you don't even have alleys in Jersey. An alley is sort of a little street behind the houses. It's got garbage cans. And male kids would walk along kicking the garbage. looking for stuff. How many of you secretly still today look down at the ground for stuff? Now, there are certain kids who just have never done that. I mean, they come from homes where if you want stuff, you tell the old man. He gives you the stuff. As much as you want. Go down to Abercrombie and Fitch, buy it all, kid. But we would look for stuff. Find fantastic stuff. It's like the night that Schwartz and I, walking along an alley, came upon an incredible treasure. We had chanced. This was not one of our usual alleys. It was an alien alley. We discovered the garbage behind a dentist's office. Have you ever seen a collection of used molars? There they are. Used molars. I mean, has it occurred to you that when the dentist does something, he throws it out? I mean, if you could find this doctor's office, you could find a foot, maybe an ear. We found teeth, used teeth, and Schwartz and I began to collect them. By the way, kids have a very interesting, and I think man is born with a curious sense of morality. Really, morality. It's the only animal, I think, that's born innately with a curious, it's never been really isolated, but a curious sense of right and wrong. Giraffes are never born with this. Gophers, turtles, no. Man, yeah. That's why we create religions. From the very beginning of time, the first caveman, I mean, he sat down there and he drew a picture of an elk. Now, there has never been an elk that drew a picture of a man. But he was commenting on the elk. Then he carved a big stone thing and says, this is the God of good stuff. I am his priest. You bring me melon. It's the first pope. He began that way. In other words, we know right and wrong. Well, Schwartz and I began to realize instantly, the minute we began to collect the first used teeth, that it was wrong. There's something unbelievably obscene about having somebody's incisor. And I had this Prince Albert tobacco can that I kept marbles in. I poured all the goddamn marbles out and began to hide teeth in there. And Schwartz is collecting teeth. And every night, we didn't want to let it out, if there'd be other kids back there, and pretty soon we'd have competition, So Schwartz and I are collecting all the teeth. Then Flick began to collect them. Bruner started to collect them. And then, of course, like any small in-group, we began to have value judgments. One impacted molar is worth 3 incisors. And we trade them back and forth. God, you ought to see some teeth. They got 28 roots hanging down. Oh, yeah, I got one tooth. God, the guy must have been 30 feet tall, I'll tell you. I mean, it was really a competition tooth, And I kept them under my bed, way in the back. I had a lot of, kids keep stuff under bed. I had a lot of baseball gloves and junk, catcher's mitts and masks and stuff behind the bed. And I stuck this Prince Albert tin way in the back under the bed, where all the dust is, those little grubbles and stuff. And on one beautiful spring day, I came home and my mother had cleaned the bottom of the bed. I walked out into the kitchen. She had the Prince Albert can. I mean, that's like your mother going out in the garage and finding that you have stashed somebody's foot back there. She says, whose are these? Tell you, it was a fantastic scene. I said, well, this is terrible. These are teeth. Look at them. They're decayed teeth. They're awful. She says, where did you get these teeth? Now remember, I'm a kid. I have a fantastic, well-developed sense of self-preservation. So naturally I said, I got them from Schwartz. There isn't a single person in this room that takes credit for any of the bad stuff he's ever done. It's an instinct. It's instinctive. You've got to protect yourself. I said, Schwartz. She says, you got these from Schwartz. She says, we'll see about that. She put the can down on the kitchen table and went over and picked up the phone. That goddamn phone. She dialed the phone and she says, Mr. Schwartz? You hear quack, 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 quack. This is Mrs. Shepherd. Quack, 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 quack. No, that's all right. No, it's all everything. Would you go look under your son's bed? Quack, 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 quack. Just go look under your son's bed, and if there's a tobacco can under the bed, bring it out and take a look at what's in there. Quack, 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 quack. Then you hear these heels. Tuk, 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 tuk. Dead silence. My mother's holding the phone. All of a sudden, I hear over the phone, ah! Mrs. Schwartz has discovered Schwartz's matchless collection. He had the biggest collection of front teeth in the neighborhood. He specialized in the front teeth. He was especially proud of one that still had a chunk of jawbone on it. Oh. Sickening, isn't it? Oh, God. Piercing voice. Quack, 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 quack. My mother says, my son got a can of teeth from your son. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Yes, he got them from him. Your son started it. Quack, 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 quack. And then you heard Schwartz in the background. Then you heard quack, quack, quack. Ah! Schwartz was learning about friendship. Let's hear it for the human spirit. Now, wait a minute. Schwartz was learning that you have no friends. When the chips are down, we're alone, buddy. No way to get out of that. And then my mother said, all right, we'll see about these teeth. She said, where did you get them? Where did you two kids get these teeth? I said, back of Dr. Slicker's office. Dr. Slicker was the dentist. She says, you got them at Dr. Slicker's office, all right. She dialed a number, and I heard her say, Dr. Slicker? Dr. Slicker, would you please come over here to my house at 2907 Cleveland Street and get your used teeth? 10 minutes later, this guy arrived with a white coat. His face was white. And he took my used teeth. He says, it'll never happen again. My mother turned to me and says, it better not happen again. And I'll bet right now there's this elegant dentist that tells his patients about the time the kids collected his used teeth. And nobody believes him. So you see, mankind is basically defensive. And all through my grade school, I had learned to avoid being called on so beautifully that by the time I graduated from 8th grade, I had not once been called on. That's talent, buddy. Real talent. And incidentally, that phrase, Bolivia exports tin, let me tell you, that has stood me in good stead. The only thing I learned in all of my schooling. I use it constantly now. I go to an elegant cocktail party. Here's George Plimpton, Gloria Steinem, all the official people, and the cocktails are quietly moving in the dark, and the lemon peels are moving over the gin. And I just sort of cool in when there's three people talking away there, and I listen for a minute. I never say anything, and then suddenly I will just come out with it with a cool, slow, controlled voice. Everything in this world is style. I said, well, the problem with your arguments is that none of you are considering the tin economy of Bolivia. Excuse me, I'll be right back. When you shot your last shot, leave, for Christ's sake. I have gotten the reputation of being a Latin American expert. People ask me to be on panels. One piece of information in your head, used judiciously, could carry you to the presidency of this university. God, that hit your belly button, didn't it? I mean, I'm telling you an absolute fact. I've even considered writing a book about tin in Bolivia. You know, blank verse. God bless Bolivia. Oh yes, one of my great fears is to actually visit Bolivia and find out that it's rubber. They don't export tin at all. My world crumbles. Like Jell-O in the sun. And then I found myself in high school. Oh, beautiful high school. You know, all that summer we graduated from grade school. Me and Schwartz are playing tennis. We've left the Warren G. Harding School. We're going to go to high school. That's a new, a whole different plateau. That's a new world. That's known in sociological terms as the child is extending his range. And I can see all of you squatting here in a pub. Your ranges have been well extended. Here you sit, cardboard cup in hand. And we're about to extend our range, playing tennis. You know, when you graduate from something, you feel like you're really on top of it. You know, you're a big person. August came, and in the mail came a blue card. My registration to high school. And when you were a freshman, at least in that high school, they registered you and assigned you already to classes the first semester. And they came in a blue 3x5 card. Your name at the top, Shepherds, comma, Jane P., comma. And next to it, it says, assigned homeroom, Miss Flora Snyder. RM room 220. And then it had the classes, 1 through 8. Underneath it was a little line that says college prep. Preparing for college. In the first class it said homeroom. 8:25, class 1. And then 55 minutes classes down the line. 4th period lunch. I looked at that thing. I had a homeroom. It said Miss Flora Snyder, advisor. Did you ever get any advice from your advisor, any of you? I don't know what I thought. You know, before you go there, you kind of think this lady sits there and tells you stories and gives you advice on what to do, you know. Totally different from the reality of it. And so Schwartz got his card. Schwartz had a totally different room. He was in room 105. His advisor was Mr. Harris, Mr. L. Harris. Now, you must remember this was trauma, because all of us had been in the same room all the way up through grade school. Now we were in different classes. September came. I was all excited. Now, in the Midwest, there is a tradition. On the first day of school, you get dressed up. Now, you don't do that at Drew, obviously. Look at you. No, seriously, when you go to school, your first day, you got dressed up. I had my electric blue sport coat, which I thought was fantastic. I had padded shoulders that hung way out, down. I had my Tony Martin roll collar shirt, big, and I had this beautiful tie, by the way. I had a knit tie. Now, that knit tie I had gotten for my birthday, and, like 2 years before, and I thought it was really great looking. And it had a knot about the size of a grapefruit, knit. And knit ties, by the way, for those of you who have ever had a knit tie, you know it, knit ties stretch. And now, by the time I was going to go to school, this was 30, 40 feet long and trailed down behind these high, great looking. I had these great shoes which had laces. They were Tom McCann shoes, and it had these Scotch plaid laces. I really thought I was fantastic. 18 pounds of greasy kid stuff. I had a D8 that stuck back, maybe, big comb. I was ready. Now, my mother had gone to all these sales. In just before school opens, you'll see it about in August. It says, "Back to school sale, the Great Eastern." And it shows clowns, and little, they always show pictures of little slates, and stuff all over, balloons. Back to school. My mother had gone and got me back to school stuff. Now, what did she get me? Well, I still have this, hidden among my effluvia of kiddom. I had a plastic case containing 2 ballpoint pens. One of them had the head of Donald Duck on the top. The other had Mickey Mouse. And the case was a ruler and had Clarabelle Cow on the front of it. I had this stuck in my blue sport coat. And I don't know why, she got me a protractor. With the little thing sticking out, the little point. I never used it, but I had a protractor. You never know when you might want to protract something, So I was really equipped, I had this notebook, 3-ring notebook. I was ready. I'm standing out there. And I had taken a bus. Of course, this school is about 5 miles away from the school I went to. And it's a huge school. This school was a whole block one way and a block back, 4 stories high. 4,000 kids went there. And they were all standing out in front on that beautiful September day. Standing out there. Not a single person I knew. All kinds of big kids walking around. There were girls with bumps on them. At the Warren G. Harding School, I was the biggest kid. These big guys walking around, great big H's all over them, birds and stars, blue jowls. I was excited, God. And then at exactly 8:12, the bell went, doors flew open, everybody charged in. And I knew immediately, I went into the great crowd of kids, and I knew instantly my head was working like a steel trap. Room 220 had to be on the 2nd floor. And by the way, I had made up my mind. I am not going to screw up. Incidentally, and I say this very seriously, this is one of the saddest of all human traits. The belief that you can change. Nobody ever changes. You are what you are, and you will be what you are until the last day on earth. But you always think, now that it's New Year's, it's going to be different. I'm going to be smart. It never works. Have you ever changed? You may evolve a little. You may get worse. But you will never change. And by the way, this is an undying human problem, and in fact, it leads to political squabbles. As long as you remember, probably in your life, people were saying, we're going to do away with all the bad stuff. We're going to get rid of the slums. We're going to have everybody beautiful, and everybody will play a guitar all the rest of his life. And no truth. liberty. They've been saying that since the days of the pharaohs. Man is man, and he will continue to be. And this is what I learned. I had planned all summer, I am not going to screw up. I am not going to fake. I will not. I faked it all through grade school. That's all over. A new shepherd is on the scene. If the other kids can learn stuff, I can learn stuff. Yes. I walked into room 220. And already half the kids were in there, the ones that have been there for 3 years. You know, this is a home room. There are seniors in there. There are sophomores and freshmen, juniors. And there was Miss Snyder sitting at her desk. Remember that first sight of her? She was thin. She wore a gray dress. She had silver gray hair. She had these gray glasses, gray skin. She had a gray Formica desk. She had a gray voice. I walked up to her. She was working on some papers, already working. She never smiled. I knew her for 4 years and never once smiled. Miss Flora Snyder knew the tragedy of education. She knew the impossibility of creating gold out of silly putty. I walked up to her with my blue card. My first moment in high school. I laid it down in front of her, and she didn't even look up. She said, "Oh, yes, Shepherd Gene P." Why, Gene is a girl's name. 5 seconds into my high school career, I could feel myself slowly sliding down the cliff. I dug my fingernails in. I said, yes. Incidentally, I had worked on all through grade school. The real thing that worked for me in school was my cute look. Whenever Miss Shields or Miss Robinette in grade school made it safe to look out, I would peek out from behind the line and throw them my cute look. So that at the end of the year when they're grading the papers, I've never missed a question. All she remembers, oh, Shepherd, oh, he's that cute boy in the back. He's so cute. And so Miss Snyder looked up at me, and I went, she just looked up, and she said, Shepherd, yes, of course. Well, you'll be in the back there. Doesn't matter. I was not going to let that get the better of me. I knew I was going to be sitting in the back of the room, but by God, I wasn't going to screw up. And I walked back and sat in the last seat. Little did I realize that I was sitting behind a famous man. Yes, 285 pounds, 6'7". For 6 years, he'd been an all-state guard. Went on to become a star lineman with the Green Bay Packers. Big Al Wisnowski. Tremendous. Big H. I could smell him. I mean, he was a true athlete. And he just sat there, and I could hear him breathing. And I'm squatting behind him. Tremendous, like a mountain range in front of me. I could see his ears, great. He had muscles behind his ears. He had a neck that just came kind of like a pyramid, right straight down. Size 42 neck. 74 chest, 18-inch waist. Solid gristle. And you could just sitting behind him, it was a great feeling of security. You could smell him. First of all, he had a curious smell. If you've ever been next to a genuine, big-time athlete, the real thing, you know this smell. It smells like ancient primal swamps. You could smell it, like just the way you think that dinosaurs smell. There was something real about him, and he would breathe. You could hear a faint whistling sound when he breathed. He didn't have nostrils, he had blowholes. I'm sitting behind Al. Somehow I felt safe. People who could block like Al never have to worry about education. They do the educating. And it was silent there for about 5 minutes. The whole crowd is now in. The doors are closed. My new career is about to begin. Miss Snyder steps to the front of the class and says something which, even at this point, years later, I hear it. 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up in the village and I hear this. I did not realize how truthful she was. It took me a long time. You know, truth is something you don't realize instantly. Evil you do. Truth comes harder. And she said the following. Boys and girls, I want to greet you on this new semester, especially those of you who are freshmen. The sophomores and the seniors and the juniors already know what's going to happen here. But to you freshmen, you're no longer in grade school. We work here. And I started to sink. If you do what you have to do here, you'll have no trouble. If you fool around, I promise you nothing. And remember one thing, and I'm about to get the truth. And by the way, that applies to you right here in Drew. What you do here will affect the rest of your lives. Well, I did not realize what she meant by that. You never do when you hear a genuine truth laid on you. It always sounds like a cliche. Somebody says a penny saved is a penny earned. You say, oh, the hell with that. You throw your pennies around. One day, no pennies. Then you understand. Well, I sat there and I said, I don't care. I'm going to go straight. I don't care what happens to Schwartz. I don't care what happens to Helen Weathers. To Zinsmeister, Shepard will listen and learn. I will not miss a single word. And I waited for the first bell, for my first class, my first foray, my first raid into the outside world. It was a dead silence, and I could hear just the faint whistling sound of Big Al ahead of me breathing. I could see his gills moving. Just another year for Al. Another year of blocking and tackling, hitting guys. And then, that's a mean bell. Summoning me to education, to life, to God knows what ecstasies. I leaped up. Now, I had my blue card in my hand. I had my notebook under my arm. I had my protractor in its holster ready for action. Donald Duck was sharpened and ready for business. The first class was in room 105. The instructor was listed as Mr. Pittenger. I had never had a male instructor before. Back in grade school, we had Mrs. Bailey, Miss Robinette, who cried every time she read Evangeline. We'd sit in the back, what the hell is she crying? It's all this business about Acadia. I went down the stairs to room 105, and the crowds were swirling on all sides of me. There it is, 105. Kids are going in. I see Schwartz. I said, Schwartz, hey, how are you? He was in room 105. Here's Helen Weathers. Zinsmeister. We charged in, laid our cards down on a desk. Mr. Pittenger, by the way, had one of these dark Oxford gray suits that looked like it's made out of sandpaper. An itchy suit, you know, the scratchy kind. Have you ever wondered about men that wear those scratchy suits, wool suits? You wonder what kind of kneecaps they got. How they can stand it. Ew, jeez. Had a white shirt, dark tie. Had this black hair. It looked like it was painted on. Big black rimmed glasses, blue jowls. Mr. Pittenger. That's some name, Pittenger. Sounds like it's an old used brick. Pittenger. Has pieces of tar hanging on it. Pittenger just took one look at my card. Says, Shepherd, S. That's S. We seat alphabetically in this class. You'll be seated in the second row here, in the back. Schwartz, you're directly to his left. Weathers, you're behind those two. Zinsmeister. You'll have to get another chair. Bring it in. Minute and a half later, my first class had begun. I hadn't even heard of the subject. The Warren G. Harding School, we had reading, geography, history, spelling. Mr. Pittenger stood at the front of the class and says, all right, we will begin this class. And immediately I see kids writing. If you notice that there's certain kinds of students that write all the time, even when nothing is going on, they're writing. You wonder, what the hell are they doing? Especially girls do that. They're writing constantly. Taking notes, endless notes. Well, I had promised myself, I am not going to miss anything. I'm going to write every goddamn thing down. So Mr. Pittenger says, boys and girls. I write boys and girls. I see Schwartz sitting upright. He's writing. Helen Weathers is writing. I can hear Zinsmeister scratching way back there. Way back in the haze where you can smell the gym. I will begin this semester by defining the subject we will pursue this year. Any questions immediately following this definition we will save to the end of the class. A-L-G-E-B-R-A. Algebra. He takes the eraser. He was one of these teachers that just grabs the eraser and inevitably leaves a little tiny piece of an E. You want to kill him, you know. You want to jump up and say, erase that, please! It's driving me crazy! It's like sitting with this girl and she's got this mayonnaise on her chin, you know. He just, takes it out and says, algebra. I write down algebra. Now erase it then. Leaving a tiny piece of the E there. Is a system. Leaves a little bit of the M. Algebra is a system of A, B, abstract mathematics. was a very dramatic teacher. He walked around like he was contemplating the infinite, contemplating abstraction. I wrote down, algebra is a system of abstract mathematics. Already I'm beginning to have a little tiny molten coal right around my thorax of fear. I didn't know what the hell abstract meant. The system was what my old man constantly bitched about. The old man used to say, it's a goddamn system! I'd sit in there all the time. I figured that's what we're studying, a goddamn system. Little did I realize how true it was. I had this sick feeling already. It was beginning to, had the curious sense. Something was about to happen. The foreboding. He erased it all. He says, now, I will give you a small example. I'm sitting there at attention. Schwartz is still sitting upright. Helen is as dry as a bone. Over the summer, Zinsmeister had become a Baptist. Everybody's trying to start a new life, you know? If x equals 2 and y equals 3, 3x plus 2y instantly, all these hands go up. The class was 10 seconds old, and I had the knowledge, the sure knowledge, that I was 7 weeks behind. Have you ever had a feeling in classes you've gone to that a lot of the others have taken it? Or deserve to be there? I couldn't figure out, how can you add X's and Y's? I was having trouble with 7s and 3s. X and Y's. And he turned to the class. He says, can anyone give me the answer? Looked. Oh my God. He looked right in the back of the room. I knew then there was only one thing I could do. I began to move like a snake. I see Schwartz slowly sinking down. I see this faint haze over here around Helen. I can hear them beads going back there. The alphabetical ghetto was back in business. And it was the first time I heard something I was to hear 4 years. I could hear from Schwartz this high, thin, faint sound. This sound of primal fear. A thin I was done. There was no way, instinctively I knew there was no way to ad-lib algebra. I had faked everything else. You can fake anything in grade school. In fact, at home, they thought I was Jeannie, the smart one. My old man used to say to my Uncle Carl, Jeannie, where do you see this, Carl? Jeannie, tell him about Bolivia. What's it? Bolivia exports tin. I can remember my Uncle Carl said, God, them kids are smarter than they ever was when we was kids. That legend and myth still persists in America. Yes, Americans, by the way, believe that every succeeding generation is smarter than the one before it. This is known as the Detroit Syndrome. Every year, the model is improved, in spite of obvious evidence to the contrary. And even then, the old man believed that I was smarter than he was because I was of another generation. And who am I to say no? I believed it too. Just like you believe yours. We all do. Man always believes good promotion. It's the bad that he rejects. And I knew it they're going to find out. I'm going to fail. I'm going to come home, and they're going to know how dumb I really am. Schwartz says nothing. Helen Weathers lost 7 pounds the first class. I remember when we left the room, I could see poor Zinsmeister sitting back there. He was still crossing himself. Algebra, good God Almighty. The next class, nothing. History. Oh, God, you can fake history anytime you want. Any questions is asked in history, just get up and say, well, it depends on whether you view it economically or politically. Instantly, that's good for 40 minutes. He'll go on, that's his favorite thing. He says, yes, well, there's a kid that knows what it's all about. You can fake your way by asking, you just don't get away with that in algebra. You just don't view algebra economically. So I knew it. And that little knot of fear began to get bigger. 2 weeks went by, 3. By that time, we've given up. Me and Schwartz, Zinsmeister, Chester, Wisniewski. We never mentioned algebra outside of school. But we all knew. It's like hardly any of us ever mentioned death. We all know. Man knows. Christmas came. 2-week vacation. Now, 2 weeks after Christmas was final exam. And I went home for Christmas, and I can remember looking at my kid brother. He was my kid brother. He was in his rubber dagger phase. He had a rubber dagger. He'd go around with a rubber dagger. I remember looking at him, and I felt like an ancient person. I remember looking at him and saying, oh, he's so young. He just won't understand when I'm gone. And I had intimations of death. How many of you have had that already? Felt you'd never reach 21? And if you do, you'll probably be blind. And then they'll be sorry. When you come in, they say, oh, there's poor Clifford. Why weren't we nicer to him? They'll be sorry. And I remember that whole Christmas vacation. I'm serious. I remember looking we'd go shopping. We'd walk down the street, and all the windows. My mother is blathering on about Christmas. My old man is looking at the stuff. My kid brother's having fun. And all I could think of is it's getting closer. I am dead. D-E-D. Christmas is over. I don't even remember what I got. It didn't matter. I would leave it to my kid brother when I'm dead. I will never live to see the summer, maybe to use the fielder's mitt. Now I am back in Mr. Pittenger's class. 2 weeks go by. I know it's done. I'm over. It's over. It's through. Yet there's something in the human spirit that makes you constantly, even though the shells are coming in at you and you know you're done, you keep moving. And I was moving. And Schwartz, I can hear that high, thin, primal scream. And every day Helen Weathers would set up her cloud. And I could hear Zinsmeister's beads. But there was no hope for any of us. But I kept moving. Wednesday came. The exam, by the way, was to be the following day. Wednesday. It was a beautiful day, almost like the kind of day we have today. You know how in the winter sometimes you get this gorgeous sudden day when the sun shines. You get this intimation of spring. A prelude to a summer that the others will live to see. It was a beautiful day. And I did the one thing that a guerrilla fighter, deep in the jungles of defeat and despair, the one thing that a guerrilla fighter does that ultimately undoes him. 55 minutes the class was. 53 of it went by in safety. I was moving like a snake as usual. It was to be my last day on earth, because tomorrow was the Blue Book exam. When I suddenly lost my concentration. When you're a fraud, you have to concentrate like hell. 2 minutes to go. Mr. Pittenger always walked over to the left side, to our right, and put a box on the board, which was the assignment. Of course, it had nothing to do with us in the back. He walked over, and I'm sitting there, and suddenly I'm aware of the sun coming down in through the Venetian blinds. And there's these little tiny motes of dust. And I could see them moving. They'd move back and forth. Little did I realize I was studying Brownian movements. What's that, huh? And out somewhere out on the practice football field, somebody was kicking a ball. You'd hear dunk, dunk. Oh, God, it was great. And down in the girls' gym, the girls' glee club was singing. You could hear it faintly in the distance. You bake a cherry pie, darling Billy. They always sing that stupid song. What the hell? You bake a cherry pie, darling Billy. And I'm drifting away. And I can hear Mr. Pittenger up there. Blah, 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 blah. Dunk, dunk. Bake a cherry pie, darling Billy. And I saw that piece of dust. Beautiful afternoon. When suddenly in the middle of all that quiet, soft haze, I hear Pittenger's voice go blah, 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 Shepherd. I looked around because I didn't recognize my name in that context, you see. I'd never been called on. Shepherd. I heard Schwartz suddenly go, ah! Ah! They got Shepherd, oh Jesus! They could get him, they could get any of us, oh my God! He laid a shell right on him! A bracket of them! And if, you know, in your moment, when you're in your last instant, you're going to be amazed at what fantastic insight you have. I looked over there and I see this big puddle all around Helen Weathers. She was using her ultimate weapon. I glanced back. Zinsmeister has disappeared. It's unbelievable. There's just a blue haze. God has reached down and snatched him. Oh, my God. Well, over the years, I had worked out thousands of escape hatches. Like, would you repeat the question, sir? He says, yes, give us the value of C in this equation. I walked forward, and I looked around. I could see all my peers, my friends. At that point, I did not realize I was about to learn one of life's truly great lessons. I think many people never learn it. Miss Snyder was right, my God. I got to the front of the class. 1 goddamn minute to go, and he got me. My face is showing no emotion. All good guerrilla fighters go to their end completely emotionless. You expect it all through your life. You're prepared for it. You do not emote. You never know. I looked down at the class. This first time, incidentally, I've ever seen the class from this vantage point. I looked down. Looked over at the equation. I looked down again, and there I see my friend, Schwartz. He'd been through all of the travails at the Warren G. Harding School. My comrade in arms. Schwartz is sitting back there, and what's he doing? Son of a bitch is grinning. Helen Weathers is grinning. Look at him. Then I realize there's nothing that a phony loves more than to see another one caught. Your friends are going to be the first to laugh when you get hit by that damn truck. Oh, they'll pretend, oh, poor Clarence, but secretly a little voice is going to say, he really screwed up. He deserved it. How many of you ever go to a hospital and feel vaguely superior to the poor bastard that's laying there? If he'd lived as smart as I would, look at him. He asked for it. Look at him, born 2 feet tall. Bastard, look at him. Oh, I'm very sorry, Herbert. Yes, oh, it's terrible. Is there anything I could do for you? Oh, yes. I suddenly knew it. I knew it, and I've never lost that. I know that I am alone in this world. Now, you probably think you're not yet. I know it. And I also know something else. What the next thing I know, I don't quite know what it is. Because you see, well, I remember looking over at the equation. Mr. Pittenger is standing over here. He's got his arms folded. I am over here looking at the equation. Now, this is the first actual equation I have seen. Couldn't believe it. This thing went from about here, I'd say about to where that guy's pulling a sword there. And it was about 1.5 feet deep. Had brackets, big brackets, lines, funny looking things, little J's, little more brackets, little 2's, X's, Y's, DX over DD, XYC, umlaut. For some reason there was a great big F in there. I looked at that damn thing. Way buried in the middle of all that stuff was thick like a Persian rug. Had fringe on it hanging down. There was a little tiny C in there. This thing went away over here and it had an equal sign, had a big 0. I had an insight that moment. You do these things when you're about to go over the cliff. I looked at this and I said, for Christ's sake, all this crap equals 0, nothing. All sound and fury. The whole goddamn thing means nothing. 0. But my face, of course, is emotionless. I look over at Mr. Pittenger. His glasses are gleaming. I see his eye. I got the message. He had been setting me up all semester. I could see it coming right out of his eye. I got the little bastard. He'd been waiting, and he just let that harpoon go. Zap! I caught it right in the thorax. Spread eagle like a butterfly on the cork board of time. Let Woody Allen top that, friends. And I could see my wings fluttering. Oh, God. No expression. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Up to that point, I had never been a religious person. In fact, I was the leader of the atheist free-thinking contingent at the Warren G. Harding School. The scoffers. I mean, stuff like, that's for little old ladies. Who believes all this miracle stuff? Walking on water, oh boy. Now I don't know. I really don't. Off in the distance, I could hear the glee club singing, "You can bake a cherry pie, darling Billy." Dunk. And Schwartz is sitting there. Mr. Pittenger's glasses are gleaming. My wings are fluttering on that eternal corkboard. I looked at the equation. When suddenly, out of somewhere, I don't know, the air, someplace, something came. It just came out of the air. And I heard myself saying, C is equal to 3. Pittenger staggered back. Oh. I caught him off guard. He says, "How the hell did you know?" "Well, I'm a guerrilla fighter. I hit the ground running. My God, it was a miracle." I said, "I used empirical means." And just then the bell went, "Ah!" and I'm gone. I'm gone. Leave, by God, when you've thrown your hand grenade. Don't hang around. Jesus, it was a miracle. And all that day, that fantastic day, I was walking 10, 15, 20 feet high. I remember it, oh God, I remember at lunchtime walking out in the sun outside of the school. I can remember Esther Jane Alberry standing on the corner pointing me out. There goes Gene Shepard, the algebra king. He does not say much in class, but he makes it count. I'm walking. A miracle, God, let me tell you, there is nothing sweeter than a totally undeserved victory. Why do you think that the Mets went bananas in '69? That was a nothing ball club. They had no right to win that goddamn pennant, as subsequent events proved. Well, all that afternoon, oh God, it was fantastic. Well, I had a study hall the 7th period. I was walking tall. I didn't care what the hell happened after that. I had that one moment. Most people never have one moment of glory. I had one. I knew it was all over, though. And that study hall was back at room 220. Miss Snyder. And I walked in. And just as I go past the desk, knowing full well that my day of glorious victory was nearing a close, Miss Snyder says, "Oh, excuse me, would you please stop by the desk for a minute?" I walked over and says, "Oh, Christ, this is it." She said, "Mr. Pittenger wants to see you after school." No expression. Oh, I said, "Fine." So that night, I walked into Mr. Pittenger's empty classroom. And as I walked in, he looked up, and he just sort of smiled. I looked him right in the eye, and I said, "Hi, Pitt." He says, "Hello, Shep, how are you?" We abstract mathematicians, you know, have a certain language. He said, "That was a magnificent performance today." He said, I think it's kind of foolish or silly of you to take the exam tomorrow." There are those who get away with it, kid. He said, I just want to tell you that was a beautiful performance. He said, "Would you care to help me grade the books tomorrow? Grade the exams?" I said, "Well, He said, "Oh, if you want to take the exam, don't." I was kind of looking forward to it, Pitt, but if you really need help, what the hell? The next day, I spent it in study hall. That night, I graded Schwartz, Helen. I just hate to tell you what I had to do to Schwartz because, well, I tried to explain to him, algebra is an exact science. No near misses, Schwartz. I remember walking home from school with Schwartz. We always used to stop by the igloo. And by the way, this is another terrible lesson you're going to have to learn. Eventually, you'll have to get, your friends are not going to keep pace with you. The talented move on. And you've got to know when the turning point comes. Schwartz and I are walking home, and he's walking down looking mean. He's looking down at the ground. We'd go home every night, and we'd stop at the igloo. We'd get a fudge-sickle. I was in my fudge-sickle phase. This was just before my Pepsi-Cola phase. I know what made me do it. I said to Schwartz, let me buy tonight. I knew what I was doing. I was taking that little salt shaker, putting a little bit on Schwartz's wound. Then I was taking a pepper shaker, a little more, and then I'd rub it in. And Schwartz is walking low and mean, and he says, you son of a bitch, you know what you can do with your goddamn fudge-sickle? You phony. I said, Schwartz, phony. Why me? Phony. He says, you phony bastard. You studied. And so, friends, tonight, on this Mother's Day, this day of national guilt, as we sit here in the beautiful, sumptuous pub, historic Drew University, hard abaft the Nautilus Diner. I want to thank you for having me here, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you. Come on, let's hear it. All right. Thank you. Listen. All right, Eddie. I'm on Eddie's. I'll break your ass here. Now cut it out. Listen, before I started tonight, about 5 kids came over to the Sanka department over there and asked me if I would have a little question and answer period immediately following the show. Did you have a good time, first of all? I hope you enjoyed it. I really, this is the first time I've ever worked a coffee shop environment since I left a place down the village. I used to do a nightclub show at the Limelight. How many remember that? And this is very similar. It's a kind of a club environment. Usually, when I play colleges, it's usually the auditorium, 2,000 people, and you can smell the gym in the distance. But I've really enjoyed it. And if any of you have any questions, just raise your hand, and I reserve the right to tell you to go to hell. All right, anybody? Yes. I have no, that was probably a Freudian erasure. I have no knowledge of such. Are you talking about a radio show or a television show or what? I do a lot of shows. I can't answer. I don't know what your question is. Well, quite often I'll do something purely to infuriate the audience. I will. I'll do that purposely. In other words, I will get up and I will say something. You see, I've discovered that if you say something with enough authority, it really has the wallop of authority. Like you'll say, one of the things I did one time, I remember I said, that I was talking about authors. And I says, not many authors ever create a character that enters the language. I said, for example, Charles Dickens' famous character Stooge entered the language. You all know what a stooge is. thousands of angry letters came from nice little old ladies who thought I'd made a mistake. I do that purposely. Like I will say things like, it is well known that the zebra is a carnivore. And of course they all assume that I'm unbelievably ignorant. And they are going to straighten me out. And so that probably is what I was doing there. So any other questions of a great import? Yes. Let's put it this way, kid, I'm a pro. No, I'll tell you, I'm an actor, remember that. My work is a form, it's very different from a classical stand-up comic who really just simply uses the audience and fires 31 liners at the audience a minute and gets maybe 5 laughs a minute. No, they actually time the number of laughs per minute in a one-line stand-up comic. My work, as you notice, is a cumulative mood that I create. And I create a whole world on stage. You could see the classroom and the kids, and I play the voices and the attitudes of them all. But you see, this does not come. Also, my technique as a performer, I believe that any good actor should sound as if he's doing this for the first time. In other words, the minute I sit down in an audience and I hear this guy saying, "My kingdom for a horse," you know he's reading the lines. Nobody would ever say that in real life. That's why I've always had trouble with a lot of actors that really I never think are acting. They're just declaiming. To me, most comics are this way. Bob Newhart's one of the worst. He does his bits in a kind of a mechanical rote. He does, and you don't have any feeling that he's telling this for the first time. And as an actor, I tell my stories many different ways. The variations on them. I'm like a jazz musician, that I know the chords and I know exactly where I'm going to go. But according to the way it's working and the way I feel, I give a different performance and a different interpretation every time. Yes, I knew what I was going to do tonight. Although I work largely also on inspiration, like the whole business of Drew University. I didn't think of that before I came here. It just hit me driving in. I saw that sign, Drew. I said, there really is one. But any other questions? Yes, behind the bar. Well, I don't think, I think that's the difference. That's a good question, and that's the first time it's ever been asked, really. I don't think that a humorist figures out what he's going to do, but a comic does. See, a comic is a guy who works on material, whereas a humorist works on viewpoint. A humorist has a point of view about the world, and you don't work it out. That's like me saying to you, did you work out how you are? Did you sit down one day and say, I'm going to work out this character? No, it just sort of happened to you. And as a humorist, you accrue a viewpoint, but you also accrue technique. You see, technique is something that I work on and worked on as an actor. I'm a trained actor. I went to Goodman Theater, Chicago, which is a very fine dramatic school. Mostly classical, by the way. I did a lot of Shakespeare in those days. And most comics have not had dramatic or classical training at all. They work right out. They come up through the Catskills, and that's about it. And that's a training, but it's a different kind. When you say work out, you see what you do as a writer. As you write and as you think and as you get closer to what you're trying to say, it sort of comes out. You don't really know where it comes from. You don't figure out. I can't imagine Melville one day saying, hey, I'm going to write this great story about a whale. He just it just came out of him, and he began to write, and it began to evolve. You can't really just say. See, that's the difference between material and real. It's just like Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce didn't one day say, well, I'm going to be this kind of guy. He just sort of became that guy. It's very hard to say how it happened. Now, I'd like to answer your question better, but that's about all I can say. Dustin Hoffman didn't create in his mind the Dustin Hoffman character. He just became it. Anybody in the back? Yeah. Yep. Well, they didn't dramatize it. I did. Did you think they did it? Had a hand in it. It's like telling Arthur Miller, hey, you know, they did this play or stuff. No, I wrote that goddamn thing. You don't read the credits, do you? I created it. They had nothing to do with it. They just put it on. But, you know, it's an interesting point. I guess we're so used to television, there is a they that we always talk about in television, and it's the they that does something. The they in this case had nothing to do with the drama or the way it was and putting it together and writing it. That took 2 years of work. But you would never think of that in terms of the movies. And so if, let's say, we'll just say for argument's sake, Stanley Kramer writes a movie or Kubrick writes a movie, you would never come up to him and say, hey, I see they did some of your stuff the other day at the movie house. He'd say, I did it. No, I did that entirely. And are they going to do another one? You mean, am I going to do another one? That's a good question. I've just come back from Hollywood. For those of you who might not have seen this film was nominated by the Critics Circle as the best comedy film of 1976, or one of the 3 best. And so was the script nominated. And so this caused a lot of talk, because the other 2 shows, by the way, were Mary Tyler Moore and All in the Family. And so it caused a lot of excitement in Hollywood. And as the way it stands now, the producer of All in the Family, that is the original producer, who is not Norman Lear, by the way. Norman Lear's company did it All in the Family. But the guy who produced it and directed, actually created the show, is a guy named John Rich. And Rich has just taken an option on In God We Trust, All of Us Pay Cash, and Wanda Hickey's Night of Golden Memories. And we are now at work making an NBC regular series of it. It will be a once-a-week, 1-hour show, probably either in the spring of 78 or 79. See, oh, no, nothing to do with Gene Shepard's. No, that was a totally different show. You got to agree that Phantom of the Open Hearth was not at all like Gene Shepard's America, was it? Or grudgingly. No, this is a dramatic series. It has the father, the mother, the characters, and it's a new technique. The technique of that film was very unusual for television, as you recall. And we're aiming it for NBC, 78 probably. And that's incidentally why I left WOR, because I got so deeply involved in writing all this and traveling back and forth to the coast. I just didn't have time to do a radio show. It became a drag on my time. Also, I've been doing a lot of college performing around the country, and I just can't be in New York 5 nights a week and so forth. So that's the future of television. That, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going full blast into it. That and a feature film. Anybody else? Yes. No. See, I've also come to a conclusion that almost all of our life, wherever we go, is pretty much the same. I mean, we're all Americans, and Americans are remarkably homogenous. If you go to San Diego, life in San Diego is pretty much the same as it is here, with minor variations. Because they have a McDonald's there. You have a McDonald's. They stand in line at the Dairy Queen. So you don't have to go, and in other words, if you talk about American life, you are in fact talking about the life of your audience. I majored in English. I also minored in psych. But that nothing to do with what I do, really. It's just a study. I never took it too seriously. Anybody over here? Any other questions? Yes. On what? Oh, I'm going to continue to do that. In fact, we've just signed a contract to do 13 more. We're going to begin to film 13 of them. Are you enjoying that show? Well, that's a good show. I appreciate that because there's some terrific people working on it and great photography and everything, and it's very funny. Well, yeah, right to to New Jersey Public Television. They've got them. But we're going to start filming some more in November. And incidentally, do any of you know where Clinton is? Clinton, New Jersey? Make sure, because you're going to enjoy it. July 16th, we're doing a big live show of Shepherd's Pie at the Clinton Museum that weekend. It's an outdoor thing with the river going by and the ducks and all that business. And it's going to be a lot of fun. My next live show of that type is going to be at Princeton. I'm playing Princeton June 3rd. And if you can get to Princeton, that is the top show that I do all year because it's in such a... Any of you ever been to the Princeton show? You have. Isn't that a fantastic place? It's in this great place called Alexander's Hall. It looks exactly like the kind of place that at midnight they ought to sacrifice virgins in it. I mean, it is really great. So if you ever get a chance to come down, it's going to be June 3rd at Princeton. And I think you'd enjoy it. It's a Saturday night. Yeah, anybody else here? Any other questions? Well, you've had your chance and you blew it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's no way to give you any advice except to say that it takes a certain amount of concentration, and everybody, by the way, believes he is innovative. I have never known any guy come up to me and say, how about a job for a guy that ain't got no ideas? And I mean, everybody believes this. Only time will tell whether you are, in fact, innovative. I can only say that if you want to get into television or any of the other media professions, as you probably know, I work in most of them. I'm a writer and a performer and an actor. I can only say get as much training as you can. It really pays off. Now, training, you're here at Drew. I'm sure, no, it's surprising how many people are, say, majoring in business administration or something like that, and they secretly say to themselves, when I get out, what I'm going to do is go into television. And you have to stick with as closely as you can to allied things. In other words, if you're aiming at television, for God's sakes, start becoming involved in the theater or whatever you have at school here. That is, you probably have a theater department. Well, man cannot live by yelling alone, I presume. But seriously, you must stay as closely involved, and don't leave school. I think a lot of guys have made a lot of mistakes in leaving school. They say, well, I'm not going to get anything here. Education is something that is very subtle, is often not specific, but it ultimately tempers you, and when you go out to go into the field that you're going into, it can't help but help you. I know many people who've suddenly found that their career is at a curious impasse simply because their lack of culture and education stops them from going into the next level of their work. Now, it's hard to tell you that, because I know our urge is always to go the easy route, go out and get a job at local Channel 6 right now, this minute. You shouldn't do that. But don't ever, because, people always think these fields are impossible to crack, and they always believe they could never get in. Well, I feel generally people who don't get into something do so because they've limited themselves. They've decided they can't get in, hence they operate on that premise. In other words, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want to be in television, you have to stick with it, and you will ultimately get in television. Be prepared, though, to spend a long time before your famed innovativeness begins to show. You have a lot to learn. That sounds like generalization, but it isn't. In other words, if you want to get into television, stick with it. Be prepared when you leave college to go out to some place like Rabbit Hash, Kentucky to get a job in a station. In other words, pay your dues. Don't immediately think you're going to go with NBC and you're going to do specials on Sunday with Charles Kuralt, maybe. That ain't the way it starts, buddy. Anyone else? Yes. Oh, you keep talking about old shows I did. Why don't you talk about today? I do that deliberately, but I'm not going to answer it now. No. Well, guess. He's going to holler porcupines. Yeah? Oh, you're talking about, well, I played minor league baseball. I wasn't hitting home runs out in the schoolyard. I played minor league ball. That's a big difference. And I remember one time the club that I was with played an exhibition game against the Cincinnati Reds, and Ewell Blackwell was pitching. That taught me that many are called, few are chosen. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was a cool 18, and I figured I really, was mean and tough. And this guy threw a pitch that came in from what looked like third base. And it came up from the ground. Oh, good God. And Ewell Blackwell was known as the Whip. He had no emotion at all, no expression on his face. And he would just bring that big sweeping, it was really a slider, but a very fast rising slider. He brought that thing in, and it was the only pitch I ever faced that actually whistled. Go by, and I'd hear it hit the catcher's mitt. You'd hear this thump, and you'd see the catcher go back 6, 7 inches. Oh, Jesus. Anybody else? Well, no other somebody down here? Yes. Well, that's a very long, involved study. Humorists, by the way, are much rarer than comics. We don't have many in this country anymore. And the reason you notice that you don't see me on, say, Johnny Carson much in that, the reason being that comics work with material that is set and is usually only a minute and a half long. You can't imagine Mark Twain working the Mike Douglas show. Because to tell a story and to create an atmosphere and to draw insights on life, it takes time. It's like a drama. So humor is a much more literary exercise. It incidentally supposes knowledge on the part of your listener or reader. Also, it's aimed at a much higher level of intellect. But a lot of the things I did tonight, you couldn't, if I did it on, say, on the Carson show, most of them wouldn't even know what I was talking about. No, you can't develop it. You either have it or you haven't. You cannot say, oh, I'm going to be a humorist, so I won't go to any parties. I'll stand and look in some window. No, Fitzgerald wrote about it, by the way. It's what they call the third eye. And it's very hard to I hate to define it because it's there. But a humorist is not the same breed of cat at all as, say, Jack Carter or Buddy Hackett. There's no way for a humorist to buy material from somebody else because he creates material. See, a humorist is a creative performer, not like Carson. All of Carson's opening monologue and all of Cavitt's opening monologues are always written for them. But no humorist could do this because it's his viewpoint, really. Yeah. That he does. Anyone else? Yeah. Well, I didn't mention it. That wasn't in my act. I was just in passing. I commented. That was much more literary than Alan's work. Yeah. Well, I don't think he's a humorist. I think he's a comic, and a good one. I think his work is superficially funny, but it really doesn't teach you much about life. You don't go away thinking, gee, that's true, we don't have any friends. I don't want to draw any value judgments because I'm not. I'm saying he does a different thing than I do. And I think he's very good at what he does, although if you saw Phantom of the Open Heart, the one that film that kid was talking about, it would be interesting for you to compare that film with, say, a Woody Allen film. You notice Woody Allen's films are always about Woody Allen. My films are really, the I in my work is just an observer. That he is observing the scene. This is a very different kind of thing. It's a different kind of ego, too. A comic's ego generally says, look what all the bad people have done to beautiful me. Whereas a humorist says, beautiful hell, we're all rotten. And so it's a whole different viewpoint. And it's not easy because you see in America today, generally, I think one of the reasons we don't have many comics is most of us really do believe there are two kinds of people, the good and the bad. We even think of politics that way. Democrats good, Republicans bad. Which, by the way, is one of the great fallacies and could lead ultimately to a dictatorship. Has it ever occurred to you that if we define one political party as evil and one as good, ultimately the good one, quote, good, is the only one that we'll allow to be in? That way lies dictatorship. And I'm making no pro-Republican comment. I'm just saying this is latent in the American soul. To think of political opponents as not having just simply differing philosophical views of life and politics and the world, but we think of one as intrinsically evil and one as intrinsically good. So Carter is good, Reagan is evil. Well, this is a very questionable thesis. And it's always part of the humor. So you'll see Woody Allen is good, and the reason that none of these people love him is that they're basically bad and insensitive to his beautiful soul. And that's part of the American viewpoint. All of you, I'm sure, that you feel that you're on the side of the angels. It led to all kinds of demonstrations. Any demonstrator feels that he's got the right answer, and all the bad people are stopping right from triumphing. And it ultimately leads to blowing up buildings and God knows what. It's the belief, absolute belief, that there is no honest difference of opinion. It's good versus evil. Nobody's going to stand and and say evil should be voted in. So it's part of our attitude towards things, and maybe because we're showbiz people, from the time we were little kids, we were brought up to believe that there was a good guy, Superman, and then there were those bad guys that he dealt with. Every play you see, there's good guys. Robert Redford is a good guy. The other guy's bad. Even when we deal with history, Bernstein and Woodward, good guys. Colson and Ehrlichman, bad guys. And good always triumphs. So it's a curious national trait. And I don't know what to make of it, except that I'm an American. I'm part of this too. I recognize this in me too. I believe that anybody that walks around, with a button that says love is implying the others don't. They don't understand it. Me, I do. We're the nation of bumper stickers, proclaiming good versus evil at all times. Warning, I honk. I brake for animals. You bastards. Go ahead and run over those turtles, if you will. You see, it's that belief that I'm one of the beautiful people and you should know it. And and the people who put those on the back of their car are firmly convinced they're beautiful. And I've always admired them. I wish I had the simple purity of heart that I could put on the back of my car. I am a concerned person. You clods. Oh, anyone else here? End of editorial. Yeah. My second, I've had 4 already. What was that? No, that was published by Putnam, G.P. Putnam. The America of George Ade came out in '62, was reissued under Capricorn Press, and I believe is still available on Capricorn. It's generally a library thing. That's why you don't see it in bookstores, because it was written as a textbook, really. Huh? Well, I've had In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash was the second book. Second. Wanda Hickey's Night of Golden Memories and Other Disasters was my third. And The Ferrari in the Bedroom was my fourth, which was published by Dodd Mead. Well, I hope you've all had a good time. Have you? Thank you. Thank you very much, gang. I want to thank you for having me.